You already know how to work hard. That's not the problem. That's never been the problem. You've set the alarms. You've made the plans. You've watched the videos, bought the courses, written the goals in the notebook you stopped opening 3 weeks later. You've had the fire before, multiple times. And every time something happens, not something outside of you, but something inside that quietly puts it out. And you're left there, in the same place, with the same income, the same thoughts, the same low-grade frustration that you've learned to call just being realistic. Here's what nobody tells you about money. The first $20,000 you accumulate, not earn. Accumulate does something to a human brain that no book, no course, and no mentor can replicate. It doesn't just change what you have. It changes what you think you are. It changes the default program running beneath every decision you make, every risk you evaluate, every relationship you enter. Most people never get there. Not because they don't earn enough. Plenty of people earn $20,000, $40,000, $60,000 a year, and still never accumulate the first $20,000. They live on the surface of money. They earn it, they spend it, they need it again. The cycle runs them. They never run the cycle. And here's the uncomfortable part. It's not a spending problem. It's not a discipline problem. It's not even an income problem, though your brain will insist it is. Because that's the safest story. The story that protects you from asking the harder question. What if the problem isn't what you're doing with money? What if the problem is what money is doing to you right now, before you've built anything? What if your current relationship with money is teaching your brain every single day to think in ways that guarantee you stay exactly where you are? That's the question. Sit with it, because the answer, when it finally lands, changes everything. And it won't land the way you're expecting. There is an enemy living inside the way you think about money. Not a person, not a system, not the economy, your boss, your family, or the city you grew up in. Those are real forces, but they're not the enemy. The enemy is smaller than all of that. And it's been there since before you understood what money was. It's called a scarcity script. Not scarcity as a feeling, everyone understands that. Scarcity as a script. A set of automatic mental instructions that run in the background of every financial decision you make, telling you how the world works, what's possible for someone like you, and what money actually means. Here's where it comes from. Before you were old enough to form a conscious opinion about money, you were watching. You were watching how the adults around you talked about it, fought about it, avoided talking about it, joked darkly about it, prayed about it. You were watching their faces when a bill came in the mail. You were in the back seat when they argued about it at red lights. You heard the phrase, "we can't afford that," so many times that it stopped being a sentence and became a truth, a description of what your family was, what people like you were. And your brain, doing exactly what brains are designed to do, built a model. The model said, money is something that leaves. Money is stress. Money is the thing we never have enough of. Money is why adults are angry. Money is a measuring stick, and you are already behind. You didn't choose this model. You inherited it the way you inherited your accent, by being around it constantly at the most impressionable age of your life. And just like your accent, it feels so natural you don't hear it anymore. But it's talking all the time. It talks when you get a raise and immediately start calculating how to spend it rather than how to keep it. It talks when you see someone else's success and your first thought isn't inspiration, it's a quiet suspicion that something must be wrong with how they got it. It talks when someone offers you an opportunity that could grow your income and your stomach tightens with reasons why this particular moment isn't right to start. This is the scarcity script. And here's what makes it truly dangerous. It doesn't feel like a limitation. It feels like wisdom. It sounds like practicality. It sounds like being responsible. It sounds like the reasonable voice of someone who's seen how money actually works in the real world, someone who isn't naive, someone who isn't getting played. The scarcity script dressed itself up as intelligence. That's how it survived. That's how it got you this far without you ever questioning it. And it's making you poor in ways that have nothing to do with your bank balance. It's making you poor in attention-spending mental energy on survival calculations instead of growth thinking. Poor in time-burning hours on low-return effort because high-return opportunity feels dangerous. Poor in self-concept, walking through your own life as someone who works hard but isn't quite built for the kind of success you privately want. You can feel it right now, can't you? That specific discomfort of recognizing something you didn't want to name. The script doesn't care that you're smart. It doesn't care that you work hard. In fact, it uses your work ethic against you, because as long as you're busy, you never have to confront the fact that your thinking isn't producing the results your effort deserves. And the cruelest part? The harder you work inside a scarcity script, the more evidence you collect that the world is stacked against you, because you're working hard, you're trying, and it's still not working. So the script must be right. There must not be enough. You must not be enough. But what if that conclusion, the one you've almost accepted as fact, is the most expensive lie you've ever believed? Let's talk about 2 a.m. Not metaphorically, literally. The version of you that exists at 2 a.m. when the room is dark and there's no performance to maintain, and you stop lying to yourself the way you do during the day. At 2 a.m., the thoughts sound something like this. I'm trying. I'm genuinely trying. But I look at where I am and I look at where I thought I'd be by now, and the gap is so big I don't even like thinking about it. Is there something wrong with me? Other people seem to figure this out. They start businesses, they save money, they make moves, and I watch them, and I don't understand what they're doing differently because I'm smart enough. I know I'm smart enough. So why is it not clicking? Then there's the second wave, the darker one. Maybe I'm just not that person. Maybe some people are built for this and some people aren't, and all the videos I watch and books I read are written by the people who were built for it, and they're trying to teach something that can't be taught. You either have it or you don't. And I think I might not have it. Then, because you can't live in that thought, you make a deal with yourself. You tell yourself tomorrow is different. You'll start the budget. You'll launch the thing. You'll make the call. You'll stop spending on things that don't matter. You'll be serious this time. Real serious. Not like the last time you were serious. This time it's actually different because now you really understand what's at stake. And you fall asleep on that promise. And tomorrow comes. And the alarm goes off. And the day fills up. And the urgency of last night dissolves in the ordinary pressure of existing. The budget doesn't get started. The thing doesn't get launched. The call doesn't get made. Not because you're lazy, you're not lazy. You're working. You're probably working too much. But you're working on the things in front of you, the things that scream loudest, the things that feel immediately necessary, and the things that would actually change your trajectory stay waiting on a list that never gets shorter. This is called the urgency trap. And it's not a time management problem, it's a neurological one. When you live inside a scarcity script, your brain is running a constant low-level threat assessment. Not consciously, you don't feel afraid most of the time. But beneath the surface, your nervous system is operating in a mild version of survival mode. And brains in survival mode are not interested in long-term strategy. They are interested in what's right in front of them. They optimize for today, they discount tomorrow. They are physically, chemically less capable of doing the patient, uncomfortable work of building something that doesn't pay off immediately. This is why you can read a book about financial discipline and nod at every page and genuinely agree with every principle and then close the book and continue doing exactly what you were doing before. The information reached your intellect. It never reached the operating system. Your operating system is still running the code it learned before you could read. And now you're in the cycle. Hope arrives, a new idea, a new strategy, a new fire in your chest. You feel different this time. You start, you work, you try. And for a while it seems like it might actually be working, or maybe you're telling yourself it's working because you need it to be working. Then comes the disappointment. The results don't match the effort. The savings don't accumulate fast enough. The business doesn't grow fast enough. The number on the screen doesn't move the way you needed it to move. And because you are someone who holds yourself to a standard, the disappointment turns inward. You don't blame the strategy, you blame yourself. You weren't consistent enough, disciplined enough, smart enough. You gave up too soon, or you picked the wrong thing, or you're just somehow fundamentally unsuited for this despite everything you believe about yourself on good days. So you reset, you consume more content, you find a new framework, you redesign the plan, you feel the hope again, and you are off, again, into the same cycle with different packaging. This is not a failure of character. This is a failure of foundation. And the foundation is what nobody wants to fix, because fixing the foundation is slow, invisible, and deeply uncomfortable, and everything in modern culture is optimized to sell you something faster. Which brings us to what you've been sold. Let's take apart the tools you've been given. Motivation first. Motivation is a feeling. Feelings are temporary. You already know this, and yet the entire self-help industry is built on manufacturing temporary feelings and selling them as transformation. Motivation is useful, the way adrenaline is useful. It's great for a sprint. It's useless for a marathon. And building financial security is a marathon. A long, boring, often unrewarding marathon where the scoreboard barely moves for long stretches. If your financial strategy depends on feeling motivated, you have already failed. Not because you're weak, because motivation is structurally incapable of doing what you're asking it to do. You cannot motivate your way to $20,000. You cannot wake up inspired every single day for the year or two it might take. No one can. And the people who actually build that first layer of financial foundation aren't more motivated than you. They've just stopped waiting to feel ready. But here's the punchline about motivation. It doesn't just fail, it actively damages you. Because every time the motivation runs out and you stop, you collect evidence that you're someone who quits. And every piece of that evidence makes the next attempt harder. Because now you're not just fighting the task, you're fighting your own history. Now let's talk about hustle culture. Hustle culture told you that the problem is you're not working hard enough, that the path to financial success is a heroic blur of sleepless nights and sacrificed weekends and outworking everyone around you until the universe finally rewards your suffering. This is one of the most psychologically destructive ideas in circulation. Not because hard work doesn't matter, it does. But hustle culture removed the most important variable from the equation, direction. It told you to work harder without asking whether you're working on the right thing. And so millions of people are now exhausted, proud of their exhaustion, and still broke because they've been sprinting in every direction except towards something that compounds. Compounding is the word. And we'll come back to it. Hustle culture also did something more sinister. It made rest feel like failure. It made thinking feel like procrastination. It made strategy feel like laziness. So the people who most need to sit quietly and redesign their approach are instead grinding on activities that produce the illusion of progress without producing any real change. You can be extraordinarily busy and completely stuck simultaneously. Hustle culture cannot explain why, which is why hustle culture cannot fix it. What about positive thinking? Positive thinking, in its popular form, is the belief that if you feel good enough about a desired outcome, reality will bend in that direction. Vision boards, visualizations, affirmations in the mirror. Here's the problem. The brain is not a manifestation engine, it is a prediction engine. What your brain actually does constantly, automatically, is predict the future based on the past. It takes your history, your current conditions, your emotional state, and it generates a working model of what's likely to happen next, and it orients your behavior toward that prediction. Positive thinking asks you to feel good about an outcome that your prediction engine doesn't actually believe in. And so you get a split system, one where your conscious thoughts are saying, I'm abundant, I'm growing, I'm successful, while your subconscious prediction engine is quietly running the scarcity script it's been running for 20 years. The two systems are not integrated. And that division is exactly why positive thinking, often produces a specific kind of failure, one where you feel like you did the inner work, you felt the feelings, you said the words, and reality didn't cooperate. And now you feel not just stuck, but cosmically abandoned, like you did everything right and the universe still said no. If none of what you've tried is working, and the tools you've been given are structurally broken, then what? Here's what they got wrong. All of these systems, motivation, hustle, positive thinking, are trying to change what you do. None of them are changing what you are. And what you are, at the level of your automatic responses, your default assumptions, your unconscious predictions about what money means and what you deserve and what's actually possible, that is running your life, not your plans, not your goals, not your intentions. There is a principle buried in the serious study of human achievement that almost no one talks about in plain language. It goes like this. Every human being has a self-concept, a deep, settled, largely unconscious sense of who they are and what kind of life belongs to them. And that self-concept acts like a thermostat. When your circumstances rise above the self-concept, the thermostat kicks on and brings you back down. You spend the money. You self-sabotage the opportunity. You pick the fight that ruins the relationship. You get sick right before the big moment. You find the reason this particular success doesn't count. When your circumstances fall below the self-concept, the thermostat kicks on and brings you back up. You hustle harder. You find the opportunity. You recover faster. The thermostat doesn't care about your goals. It cares about its setting. And here's what reaching $20,000 and staying there actually does. It doesn't just change your bank balance. It changes your thermostat setting. It gives your nervous system a new baseline to defend. It shifts the self-concept from someone who is trying to build something to someone who has built something. And the brain, that prediction engine, updates its model. The world looks different from that place. Not because you have more money, but because you are, neurologically and psychologically, a different kind of person. One whose default thinking is oriented toward protection and growth rather than survival and recovery. That shift is not automatic. It doesn't happen the moment the balance hits $20,000. It requires something specific. Tell me in the comments, what's the one financial decision you keep saying you'll make next month? The one that you've said you'll make for 6 months now. Be honest. Not because I need the answer, because you do. Now here's how the shift actually happens. Not in theory, in practice. In the specific internal changes that separate the people who build that first layer of financial foundation from the people who stay in the cycle. The first principle is what Hill called the definiteness of purpose, but not the way it's been taught to you. Most people interpret definiteness of purpose as having a clear goal, a number, a date, a vision. And so they write down $20,000 by December and call it definiteness. It isn't. A goal is a destination. Definiteness of purpose is something different. It is an unwavering internal commitment to a specific outcome so complete that it reorganizes your decision-making hierarchy without you having to consciously remind yourself. Most people never experience this because they confuse wanting with deciding. Wanting is passive. Wanting lives in the part of your brain that says, that would be nice. Wanting is compatible with never starting, with constant delays, with perpetual preparation. Wanting keeps your options open. Wanting lets you feel like you're still pursuing something while not actually paying any cost. Deciding is different. Deciding closes off other possibilities. Real deciding means that when a social invitation conflicts with your saving goal, there is no tension, the decision was already made. When an impulse purchase arrives and you feel the desire, there is no extended negotiation, the decision was already made. Not because you're suppressing desire, because your hierarchy has already been reorganized. The reason most people never reach this kind of decision is that reaching it requires confronting a specific fear that almost nobody names aloud. The fear of committing, not the fear of failure. You can manage failure. You failed before and survived. The deeper fear is committing and then failing, because that version of failure is final. It doesn't leave room for, well, I didn't really try. It takes the last defense mechanism off the table. And so people live in wanting forever. The mental shift here is not to try harder. It's to notice that the reason you haven't decided is that you're protecting yourself from a specific kind of pain. And then to make the trade consciously. I will accept the risk of real failure in exchange for the possibility of real success. That trade, made clearly and honestly, is where definiteness of purpose actually starts. But here's what makes that principle unstable on its own. Purpose without a structure to execute inside becomes another form of pressure. You're committed, you decided, and now what? The commitment is there, the direction is there, and the habits are still the same, which is why the first principle lives or dies based on the second. The second principle is what we might call controlled financial attention. Here's how Hill actually understood money not as a resource to be accumulated, but as a form of compressed attention. Every dollar you hold represents a unit of human effort and time that has been compressed and made transferable, which means how you direct your money is how you direct your past effort, and how you direct your future money is how you'll direct your future attention. Most people have no idea where their attention is going, not because they don't care, but because they've never built the practice of seeing it. They earn money, they have a vague sense of where it went, and they reach the end of the month with less than they expected and more confusion than they should have. Controlled financial attention is not a budget in the way that word is usually used. Budgets feel restrictive because they're framed as deprivation, what you can't have, what you have to cut, what you must sacrifice. Controlled financial attention is about something different. It's about giving your past effort a direction before someone else gives it one for you. Because here's what happens without it. Every company whose product you use has a dedicated team of brilliant, highly paid people working right now to make sure that your attention and therefore your money flows toward them effortlessly, naturally, in ways you barely notice. They are better at extracting your money than you are at keeping it, not because they're smarter, but because they've built systems and you haven't. Controlled financial attention means building a counter system. In practice, this looks like one specific habit. Before any money moves, you decide where it's going. Not after the fact, not when the bank statement arrives. Before. You create a simple, honest map of your income, and you give every unit a destination, including especially the unit that goes toward the $20,000. The mental shift here is not discipline, it's vision. When you can see exactly where your compressed attention is going, you stop experiencing the vague financial anxiety of someone who suspects they're leaking but can't find the hole. That anxiety alone costs you more than the actual leakage because it keeps your nervous system in the low-level threat state that prevents strategic thinking. When the anxiety lifts, the quality of your thinking changes. And that's where the third principle becomes accessible. The third principle is asymmetric effort allocation. Hill wrote about this in the context of the mastermind, the idea that not all effort is equal, that a small number of actions produce a disproportionately large percentage of results, and that the role of intelligent work is to identify those actions and concentrate effort there, rather than distributing it evenly across everything. Most people do the opposite, and they do it instinctively, because equal effort distribution feels fair. It feels like you're not neglecting anything. It feels responsible, but it's one of the most expensive habits you can have. In financial terms, it means you're spending equal attention on choosing the best streaming plan, the most efficient grocery route, the cheapest gas station, and these same habits of frugal attention never get applied to the 3 or 4 financial decisions in a year that actually determine your trajectory. The big decisions, where you work, what skills you develop, where you live, which opportunities you pursue, which debts you carry, and at what cost get the same quality of thinking as the decision about which brand of cereal to buy. This is not stupidity. It's a scarcity script behavior. Scarcity thinking is trained on small numbers because small numbers were always the stakes. $20 mattered enormously. $20,000 is so abstract it never received the same focused attention. Asymmetric effort allocation requires a deliberate recalibration. It means consciously identifying the 3 financial levers in your current life that have the most impact on that first $20,000, and then applying to those levers a level of strategic attention that would feel almost embarrassing compared to what you've given them before. One of those levers is almost certainly your income, not your expenses, your income, because there is a floor to what you can cut and no floor to what you can earn. But income growth requires a kind of uncomfortable, specific, often social action that expense management doesn't, and so people with scarcity scripts instinctively default to cutting rather than growing, because cutting is private, quiet, and safe. Here's what's underneath the 3rd principle that most people miss, and it connects directly to the 4th. The 4th principle is evidence accumulation. Hill's understanding of belief, real belief, not stated belief, was that it is not created by thinking. It is created by experience, by the accumulated record of your own actions and their outcomes, by the evidence your brain has collected about what you are capable of. And here's the specific problem. When you live inside a scarcity script, the evidence you're accumulating reinforces the script. Every impulse purchase is evidence that you can't control spending. Every failed savings attempt is evidence that you're not someone who saves. Every time the money disappears before the month ends, the script gets a confirmation vote. Your brain is keeping score, and right now the score is not in your favor. Evidence accumulation as a principle means you start deliberately, strategically changing the score, not by pretending the old evidence doesn't exist, not by affirmations, by creating new evidence with actual money in the actual real world. This is why $20 matters more than $20,000 in the beginning. Not because $20 is the goal, because the first time you move $20 to a savings account and leave it there for a month, your brain gets a confirmation vote in the other direction. You kept money. You are someone who keeps money. 1 vote, then 2, then 20. The thermostat begins to reset not because you read something new or felt something powerful, but because you showed your own nervous system a new kind of evidence. The mental shift here is understanding that the early stages of building $20,000 are not primarily about the money. They are about building a new identity through evidence. The money is real, but it is also proof. Proof to the deepest operating system in your brain that the scarcity script is not the final word on what you are. But evidence accumulation has a trap. And the trap is subtle enough that most people fall into it even when they're doing everything right. The trap is called visible progress dependency. It's the need to see the number moving constantly to maintain the behavior. Because in the early stages, the number doesn't move the way your brain wants it to. You save $100. It's still $100. It doesn't feel like progress, it feels like a fraction. And the brain, trained on urgency, trained on immediate feedback, starts questioning whether this is worth it. Which is why the 5th principle is non-negotiable. The 5th principle is the architecture of irreversibility. One of the most underused ideas in Hill's entire body of work is the concept of burning your boats, making certain outcomes structurally impossible rather than just motivationally difficult. Not as a metaphor, as a literal design principle for your financial environment. The reason this principle exists is that willpower is a myth, not the concept of self-control that's real, but the popular version of willpower, where you white-knuckle your way to good decisions through sheer force of character, is not a sustainable system. It fails under stress, under fatigue, under social pressure, under any condition where your cognitive resources are depleted. Which, if you're a working adult with responsibilities and a brain running a constant scarcity threat assessment, is most of the time. The architecture of irreversibility means you design your financial environment so that certain good behaviors happen automatically, regardless of how you feel on a given day. An automatic transfer that moves money before you can spend it. A savings account at a different bank that requires deliberate effort to access. A financial structure where the default outcome, the thing that happens if you do nothing, is accumulation rather than spending. When you build this architecture, you stop relying on motivation, discipline, or willpower. The environment does the work, and your finite mental energy gets redirected toward the higher stakes decisions that actually require active thought. This is the principle that makes all the others sustainable. Without it, you're holding the building up with your hands. With it, the building holds itself. But here's what you need to understand about all 5 of these principles together. Reading them is not implementing them. Agreeing with them is not living them. And the distance between understanding something intellectually and actually operating from it is where almost everyone gets stopped. Because when you start to actually implement this, when you start to actually change the financial behavior that your identity has been built around, something is going to happen that you are not prepared for. You're going to meet your old self, and your old self is not going to be happy. This is what nobody warns you about. All the content about financial transformation is focused on the strategies. Very little of it talks about the internal war that starts the moment you begin to actually execute them. Because the moment you begin to act differently with money, the moment you move that first $50 and leave it there, the moment you say no to the thing you always say yes to, the moment you start building the evidence, your identity will fight back. Not because your identity is evil, because your identity is trying to protect you. Every behavior you've had with money, every pattern you've run, every loop you've been in your brain, categorized all of that as how a safe person behaves. Not a successful person, a safe person. The person who survived. The person who made it through the uncertainty of childhood and adolescence and early adulthood without catastrophic failure. And that person deserves respect because they did survive. But survival-built identity is not expansion-ready identity. And when you start behaving like someone who is building, your survival identity experiences it as a threat. You will feel this as anxiety without a clear cause. You'll be doing the right thing, and you'll feel unsettled, wrong, like you're pretending, like someone is about to catch you acting like a person you're not. That feeling is not a signal that you're doing it wrong. It's confirmation that you're doing it right. You will feel imposter syndrome, not about your skills or your intelligence, about your money. The thought will arrive, who do I think I am, treating money this carefully? Who am I to think this actually works? People from where I'm from don't build like this. And even if they do, there's something in me that's going to mess it up eventually. There always is. Let that thought finish. Then do the thing anyway. You will feel the pull of old behavior like gravity, the social invitation that conflicts with your saving goal, the purchase that your old self would have made without thinking, the familiar relief of spending money you'd planned to keep, the way it breaks the tension of holding it, the way it makes you feel like yourself again, normal, relaxed, like you stopped performing and just lived. That pull is real. It is not weakness. It is the nervous system defending its baseline. You do not overcome it by being stronger than it. You overcome it by not putting yourself in a position to fight it, by building the architecture so the fight doesn't have to happen, by making the default outcome the accumulation you chose in your calm, clear-headed moments, and not relying on your tired, pressured, social obligation version of yourself to hold the line. There will also be people, not people who want to sabotage you. Most of them don't consciously know what they're doing, but people for whom your changing behavior is uncomfortable because it implicitly challenges theirs. The friend who makes a joke when you order water instead of the extra round. The family member who questions why you're being so tight lately. The coworker who says you've changed like it's an insult. Your change in behavior is a mirror, and some people don't want to look in mirrors. You do not owe them an explanation. You owe them nothing except the version of yourself you've decided to become. But here's what this war will feel like at its peak, and it always has a peak. You will be weeks or months into this. You'll have built some evidence. The number will be real. And one day you'll wake up and feel with absolute clarity that none of this is going anywhere, that you've been disciplined and patient and structured and the universe doesn't care, that the effort is real and the result is still too small, that the gap between where you are and where you need to be is so wide that all of this is a fantasy dressed up in a spreadsheet. Do not make decisions on that day. That feeling is not insight. It is the scarcity script making its final play. It always shows up just before the compound effect becomes visible, just before the evidence reaches critical mass, just before the thermostat shifts. It is not a sign to stop. It is a sign that you're close. Let me describe the person on the other side of this, not their lifestyle, their internal architecture. They wake up and their first financial thought of the day is not, "How are we doing?" The anxious, vague, dreading question of someone whose security is uncertain. Their first financial thought is a direction, not because they have enough, not because the fear is gone, but because the baseline changed and the nervous system knows it. They see opportunity differently, not because they have more money, though they do, but because their threat assessment changed. The brain that is defending a position can explore terrain. The brain that is fighting for survival cannot. And so the person on the other side of this sees options in situations where their old self only saw walls. They hear conversations that their old self would have filtered out as irrelevant. They ask questions that their old self would have considered presumptuous. They handle failure differently. Not with less pain, with less permanence. When something doesn't work, the thought pattern has changed from "this confirms who I am" to "this tells me something I needed to know." The failure is information, not identity. And because it's information, it can be processed and used rather than suppressed and avoided. They relate to work differently, not because they work less, or even work differently in terms of tasks, but because the story underneath the work changed. They are no longer working to escape a deficit. They are working to build something specific. That shift from running away from to building toward changes the energy behind every action in a way that other people feel before they understand it. They relate to other successful people differently. The envy that used to arrive automatically is replaced by something closer to recognition. A sense that success belongs to people who did a specific kind of internal work. Work that is hard but not mysterious, available but not free. And since they are now doing that work, success belongs to people like them. This is not confidence in the shallow sense. Confidence can be performed. What this is deeper. It's the settled, quiet knowledge of someone who has shown themselves with evidence that they are capable of keeping a commitment to their own growth. That knowledge doesn't require external validation. It doesn't collapse when someone doubts you. It doesn't inflate when someone praises you. It simply exists as a fact about who you are. And it started not with a revelation, not with a mentor, not with a perfect strategy, with the decision to hold $20 that you would previously have spent. That is how identity changes. Not from the top down, from the bottom up. One small act of financial integrity at a time, until the accumulated evidence outweighs the inherited script, until the thermostat has a new setting, until you are, quietly and irreversibly, a different kind of person. Now we're at the end, and I'm not going to soften this. You've read everything I just said, and right now there are two things happening simultaneously inside you. One part of you recognizes it. One part of you is already building the case for why this doesn't quite apply to your specific situation, your specific circumstances, your specific version of stuck. That second part is the scarcity script doing its job. It has one function: to keep you in the position you're in. Because the position you're in is the position your nervous system has categorized as safe, not good, not fulfilling, not aligned with what you actually want from your life. Just safe. And the question in front of you right now is not whether you have the strategy. You have the strategy. The question is whether you are willing to do the uncomfortable, inglorious, deeply unsexy work of changing who you are at the level of automatic behavior, not for a week, not until the motivation fades, but for long enough that the evidence accumulates and the thermostat shifts. Most people are not because they're weak, because they're comfortable enough that the pain of staying is less than the discomfort of changing. Because the life they're living, as frustrating as it is a known frustration, and the unknown is harder than the familiar, even when the familiar is suffocating. But some of you reading this are at a different point. You're at the point where the familiar has become genuinely unbearable, where the gap between who you are and who you know you're capable of being has become impossible to ignore, where the 2 thoughts have stopped being occasional and started being constant, where you're done collecting evidence that you're not quite the person you were supposed to be. That's who this was for. Not the person who needs motivation, the person who is done needing it. The person who is ready to decide, really decide, and build the boring, structural, evidence-based life of someone who is no longer at the mercy of a script they didn't choose. You don't need more information. You need to move the first $20. If you're done being the person who understands everything and changes nothing, say so in the comments. One word is enough. And if this is the kind of thinking your mind has been starving for, you already know what to do.